Welcome to Horror Franchise Wednesday. It is time to finally tackle the Final Destination franchise. I've had a lot of people requesting this, and you can thank my patron, Jeanette, who chose this as her series request on Patreon. She donated a lot of money and chose this franchise to do next, and this is one of my favorite franchises of all time. It is easily top 3. There were 2 franchises that scared the shit out of me as a kid. Final Destination was one of them, and the other one was Child's Play. Now, we got 5 movies to discuss, and hopefully a 6th one in a year or two. I was waiting for that movie to come out to start this review series. It was announced in 2019. Actually, it was announced with a Part 7 also. When 5 came out, 6 and 7 back to back, Tony Todd confirmed it. Like, if Part 5 does good, which it did, we're going to make 2 more, but never happened. And then in 2019, they announced the writers of Saw 4 through 7 in the collector and collection. We're going to write the next one, and then we heard nothing for a year. Come January 2020, we get a little snippet of information like, oh, this is what it's going to be about. And then, again, nothing for over a year and a half. What's going on? Final Destination 6, where is it? Oh, well, now we got new writers and new producers, and it's like, fuck it, I'm done waiting. So let's talk about the Final Destination series now. So Final Destination came out in 2000, and it was directed by James Wong, written by James Wong, Glen Morgan, and Jeffrey Reddick. And the plot is about a teenager who has a terrifying vision of him and his friends dying in a plane crash. He prevents the accident only to have death hunt them down one by one, which is the same plot for the next 4 movies as well. This is like the 2000s version of Friday the 13th. Like, this is my generation's Friday the 13th franchise. It's just rinse and repeat, and not much else is added in each film. Just a little bit is added, but not a whole lot. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This DVD I have has a interesting bonus feature thing. Like, it has like these games on it. Like, it has like a psychic test to find out like how clairvoyant you are, or, you know, if you're just lucky, or if you have bad luck. It like asks you to guess what's underneath a card or something. I took the test and I failed miserably. And then another thing that's on this DVD is it predicts when you're going to die. It gives you the exact date, like time, the day, everything. And it asks you a bunch of like medical questions about your lifestyle. And when I answered the questions, it told me I was going to die this New Year's Eve. So I ain't got long left on this earth. So let's jump into the positives. And some of my positives are going to be the same for a lot of these movies, because like I said, they're pretty much the same almost. But the score, I don't think it gets talked about at all. People talk about scores in the other big franchises, but no one ever brings up the soundtrack to these Final Destination movies, especially the first 3 by Shirley Walker, who I heard, I'm not sure if it's true, but I heard that she was like the first female composer to do like a big studio film. So I thought that was interesting. She does 1, 2, and 3, and then she died right after 3. Was like in post-production, and she was scoring Black Christmas at the same time and died like halfway through that movie. So she couldn't come back for 4 and 5, unfortunately. But her score for these movies are terrific. Like, as soon as the movie opens up, you hear her music over the New Line Cinema logo, and it just lets you know right out of the gate that something evil is coming. It's very foreboding, it's ominous, it's very creepy, and I love the soundtrack for all these first 3 movies. Another thing that all these movies have is great opening credits. You don't get boring opening credits. They're all visually intriguing. Like in this one, and the second one's kind of similar with just weird things around the bedroom. And then with 3, you get all the foreshadowing images, and in part 4 and 5, they kind of have like callbacks to all the other deaths. So these movies have really cool opening credit sequences. And this franchise has the scariest villain of all, something that we all think about from time to time: death. Unseen, you can't see it, you don't know where it's at, you know, it's around the corner, it could be anywhere. Death is going to come get you at some point, no matter who you are. It doesn't matter, even if you're Carter.
I'm never gonna die.
You sure about that? And this is just such a great premise. It's unique, and it just allows for anything to happen. Just death can kill these people in any way. It's unpredictable. On first time watch, it's so fun to like guess what's going to kill them. Is it this, that? Is it going to be the radio or this thing? Is it going to electrocute them? You never know with these movies. And the kills are fantastic. And again, like the score, not talked about enough with this franchise. You get the gore that you couldn't get before in these other franchises that are more popular and get more credit and more praise. In this franchise, which is more smartly written in my opinion, has way better kills and it's not censored as much. You get to see so much more in the way the kills are set up are fantastic. The set pieces in these films, they're bigger budget feeling. Like these movies all have huge budgets, which is probably why they don't make as many as they do with the Halloweens and the Friday the 13th, and because those are like probably $1 million budgets or less. These are like $30 million budget films because of the huge set pieces and the opening disasters, which are another positive thing about these films. And this one also is the opening disaster. This one being on an airplane. It taps into people's fears of airplanes, so it's just very effective, and it's just done so well. The airplane sequence when it's shaking and the side explodes, all the effects done there, and when the fire like engulfs the whole area and the skin's melting off his face, like it doesn't look CG at all. And I really like the characters in this movie. I like that all the names are horror, like directors and producers, famous horror people, not like the obvious ones. You don't get like a Craven and Carpenter, Cunningham. You don't get that stuff, but you get some horror names in here that aren't as familiar to today's generation. But getting back to the characters, why I like them, you got Billy Hitchcock, played by Sean William Scott, and he's the comic relief character, and he does it pretty well. You got Devon Sawa playing Alex from Idle Hands, and this one he's playing a much more serious role. And the acting from a lot of these people is great. The one exception, the one person in this movie that I found their acting to be not as strong as everyone else's, to me, was Larter. Another thing I really like is the clues, the hidden ones, and the ones that you don't really catch on the first view. Ones that you probably would never find out unless you like looked it up and read some trivia. There's all kinds of little like Easter eggs, things hidden in the background, images on the wall that foreshadow things in the opening credits. And for this one and part 3 especially, that when you just go back and watch it again, you're like, oh shit, this is foreshadowing this death. And I love that the visions in this franchise are never explained. Who is giving these visions to these people? Are they just clairvoyant? Are they just gifted people that are fucking up Death's design? Or is Death giving them these visions on purpose because he wants the design to change? Like he's bored? Let's just say Death is a he for some reason. Let's just say like Death is bored and that's why he's doing this. Like it doesn't tell you. And I love that. And I feel like if they did make another movie, that's where they would go. Like, we can't just make the same movie again, so we're going to start explaining shit. And hell, let's just show death. Let's show a Grim Reaper. Like, no, don't ever do that. I'm glad he's, like, invisible. Again, I'm not sure if death is male or female, but death is invisible in this. The Grim Reaper is the killer, and we don't ever see him. We just see shadows, during like each kill scene. Like they see a glimpse of some like shadowy figure in like the tea kettle and the rear view mirror. You never see it, and I love that. And I love again that there's no explanation. There's not too much exposition. But just to theorize, my explanation that I just came up with, I kind of already said it, is just Death being bored. Like he had this design and then he was like, nah, scrap that, let's change it up. And he wants to kill these people in different ways. So he's just kind of doing things to push them in the right direction, pushing one domino to lead to something else. He's just bored. Like these people are never going to make it in any of these movies. They're all going to die. And he knows that. He or she or it, whatever. So he just gives one person the vision and, allows him to, or it, or whatever, to kill them in different ways because it wants to have fun. It's just fucking with them. And that's why at the end of these movies, it always like waits 5, 6 months, makes them think it's all over, and then it comes back like, nope, motherfucker, haha, like I'm still around. Just tormenting them. And I think that's awesome. Another thing that's great about this movie is the ending, and thank God for test screenings, because otherwise we would have had some other shitty ending that just would have been a completely different feeling movie. It would have been kind of like soap opera-ish, like it would have had forced love interest shit in here. Like the alternate version of this movie was Clear and Alex have sex on that beach during that scene, and she gets pregnant, and because she has an innocent soul in her womb that wasn't a part of Death's plan, she gets to live. Alex dies, Carter lives, and they never go to Paris, and they just go to visit his gravestone, his gravestone at the end, and then she just has like the baby in a carriage, like the end, like nothing exciting, nothing awesome like we have now with this alternate ending. Now the true ending. Thank God for test screenings. This movie clicks along at a good pace, and I just think the third act is one of the more exciting third acts in the franchise. Like everything right before the alternate ending at Clear's house is pretty exciting, and I like how it's written, how all the different like Rube Goldberg machine like shit is happening, how this thing's bumping into that and this and that. Like the way that was all executed, I thought was done really well. Getting into my negatives, nitpicks, things I just didn't care for is Clear. I already talked about the performance, but Clear being like somewhat clairvoyant also. It's like she has almost the same ability as Devon Sawa's character. Like she's at Todd's house. Like I don't get that. And even when he's questioning her after, I'm glad he's questioning her, but she never really gives him a good enough answer. Like he's like, why were you there? Like how did you know to go there? And she like avoids the question at first, but then later she's just like, oh, I just felt what you felt. But it's like, so you just knew that Todd was in trouble? How? Like he got a clue, a physical clue that said Todd. What did you have? You just felt what he felt? Are you psychically linked to him? Like, I don't understand it. I wish they would take that out of the movie completely. Another thing that kind of bugs me is the fact that I can't make sense of this revelation, this twist, and the whole path of the explosion thing. I just don't get it. And you never have that issue with the other sequels. It's very straightforward. Like, they die in this order in the vision, like you can see who dies in what order. But in this one, the airplane just explodes and they're all like dying at the same time. So it's like, well, who dies when? So they like draw this map thing, and it's like the explosion goes from here to here. But it's like, well, that doesn't really make much sense. Like, how do they figure this out? And like, how is it that the seat of Todd is like blowing up and that's where the fire's going? It's killing Todd before. It's killing Todd and all these other people before it gets to Devon's character, Alex. Like, it doesn't make sense. How is Miss Luton dying before Carter, but after Terry? Terry and Carter were sitting right next to each other, so you would think they would be back to back, their death scenes. It just doesn't make sense. I don't get the path of the explosion thing, and it's so inconsistent. Those pictures, like in one picture on the TV, it's like, it looks like this, but then when he's looking at it on the computer, the design kind of changes it a little bit. Okay, so I thought about it some more, and it still doesn't make 100% sense, but I guess Death, for some reason, is going in order of where he was supposed to sit. Like, it doesn't matter that he changed seats. Death is killing them in the order of this explosion based on where he was supposed to be sitting. But in the premonition, he's sitting in front of Clear, and therefore he died right before Clear in that premonition. But I guess this is the only movie in the franchise that doesn't give a shit about that. In the other movies, it's always like, well, who died first, second, and third? In this one, they're really all dying at the same time almost, but it's just not going by that rule. This is the only one that doesn't have that rule. It's just going based on, well, he was supposed to be sitting back here, and this line, this right line hits him after the left line that he drew hits her. So that's how they explain it. It's weird. It should have made more sense. They need to explain it better. Another thing that's kind of confusing and ambiguous is Tony Todd's character. And don't like it. I don't like his character. Just feels like that typical exposition character who like gives the characters all the exposition they need and sends them on their way. It's like this movie, his character is the equivalent of like in another supernatural movie where they go to like some crystal ball lady, some medium who's going to tell them how to defeat the evil. Like that's who his character is basically. And they never explain how he has all this information. Is he deaf? Like he's taking the form of a mortician just to speak to them? And if so, why would he do that? Like why would death want to feed them this information? So it's like that doesn't really make much sense. So to me, here's what I thought about this time, because I've never really thought more than 2 seconds about it until this review. Now that I'm having to sit down and be critical, here's my explanation. I think somehow he's had a similar experience. Maybe that should be Final Destination 6. Tony Todd and his experience, he had a similar situation. He had a vision, or he knew someone that had a vision, and he was in a similar scenario, and that's how he got all the information somehow. I don't know. Like, that's how I like to look at it, because he has all these answers, and you just never know how he got these answers. He's like telling them everything, like death is coming for you. He's got a design. He's gonna kill you in the order or whatever. Like, and then in part two especially, he knows way too much. Like he knows their name and everything, so it makes it seem extra supernatural, his character. And I don't like it. I wish they would take, as much as I like Tony Todd, you know, he's Candyman. It's great to see him here, but I wish this character was written differently, or you know, it was more clear, his character, like who he is and how he got his information. I just wish it was more clear. So final thoughts. This is a fun, frightening, unique film that spawned an amazing series, and this one flies above the rest with one exception. The story is very engaging. I think it's smartly written. Only have a couple little questions. Some things could have been explained a little bit more clearer, but I still really love the movie. It's tonally balanced. It's not too comedic. It's mostly suspenseful and scary, and it just has a really cool cast of characters. So when it comes to Final Destination, I love this movie. It's a childhood favorite. I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. All right, time for a spoiler discussion. So some things I noticed in the opening credits that foreshadow future deaths of certain characters is the hanging skeleton, Todd, and then the picture of the guillotine, Billy Hitchcock. And then there's like a book that says Death of a Salesman. There's all kinds of stuff like that in this movie. Little clues, little things that are showing that death is coming. And, you know, it even says the end is near. And then the clock shows 180, which was the original title of the movie, Flight 180. And then they changed it because they didn't want it to be confused with other like airplane action movies at the time, like Con Air or whatever, Passenger 57 or whatever those movies are called. And so they changed it to Final Destination, and thank God they did, because if you made sequels, what would you call them? And would they all have to be about airplanes? Like Final Destination 2 with that premise, why would it be called Flight 180 Part 2? Like, it wouldn't work. So it's a good thing they changed the title. One thing I noticed probably for the first time while watching it this time is when he's on the bed right after the opening credits, he can hear that woman, the blonde chick on the airplane, saying his name. You know how when the premonition ends, he wakes up and the girl's like, Alex, can we switch seats? Todd has this medical thing. You hear her saying his name right here in the opening before that character's ever introduced, before he gets to the airport. I thought that was really odd. Like, he's already hearing like the future in his bed. That I never noticed it before. Anybody else? Alex's character is set up as a very superstitious person. He has like all these crazy beliefs in, don't rip the tag or it's bad luck, and she rips it anyways, and the airplane ticket says that the date is May 13th. So is it Friday the 13th? Maybe that's why they're so unlucky. You never know. And this movie also makes it seem like coincidences are signs of bad luck. I'm not sure if that's a thing or not. I've never heard of such a thing, but there's many coincidences in this movie that lead to bad things, like when he's at the counter, and the lady behind the desk is like, oh, your departure time is the same as your birthday. Strange coincidence. And then later on, they all coincidentally are at like the coffee shop right before the bus kill. So it seems like whenever there's a weird coincidence, something bad is coming. And another coincidence is the fact that the gate number is the same number of students in this Paris school trip. Another little clue at the airport that something bad's coming is like he's looking at the board and it says terminal. And, you know, the way the board's moving, they make it seem all creepy. And I read that it was a CGI board. Like, that thing wasn't even there. Like, they just did some kind of CG effect on that. And you got that creep at the airport who's like, you know, death is not the end. And the teacher's like, if you keep harassing my students, I'll make sure it's the end for you. I love the use of John Denver's Rocky Mountain High. I think it's creepy, kind of. It has like this foreshadowing lyric in it about there being a fire raining in the sky, kind of talking about the airplane blowing up in the sky and raining fire. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it's playing at the airport, and John Denver died in a plane crash. And it's playing later on at Miss Luton's house, and it's playing on the radio in Todd's bathroom. It's just everywhere. One thing that I thought was kind of silly and a bit mush was the fact that the luggage car had 666 written on top of it. Like, come on, like, you have already 20 other clues that something bad's coming. Todd's character foreshadows his death a couple of times. He, like, twice is talking about, like, gagging, hanging, and he's making, like, hand gestures like he's choking, and then later on he's being hung in his own bathtub. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Smart writing. And this character's on the toilet multiple times in this movie, and it looks like he's sitting on his shirt both times. Like, is he taking a shit on the back of his shirt? So then we get the whole plane sequence, you know, takes off, and I love, there's like this false scare at first. They all kind of start chuckling, nervous laughter, like, oh, it's okay, and then boom, and the side opens up, people are getting sucked out one by one. I used to think that the first chick who got sucked out was Miss Luton, but it's clearly not her. No, wait, no, I thought it was Clear. I thought Clear was the one getting sucked out the side, but that's not her. But then someone just randomly explodes, like there's an explosion, and like body parts hit the ceiling. I wonder who that was, if it was supposed to be anyone we met. And they established that there's mentally handicapped people and babies on this plane, so it's fucked up to think that babies and mentally challenged people are being blown up in this plane also. One thing this franchise does in every single movie is that after they wake up, they have to like check certain things, and certain weird things will happen to tell them that it wasn't a dream. In this one, you only get one clue. It's just the thing popping off. In the other sequels, there's like 2 or 3 different things happening that tell them that it wasn't a dream, it's real. And they almost didn't include that at all. It was just supposed to be him waking up and automatically freaking the fuck out without any evidence to show that it was not a dream and that it was a vision. So I'm glad they threw that in here, because it became kind of a big part of the franchise. Every movie after this has those little extra things. The Highway to Hell song, and the garbage bag lady in part 2, the gum and the camera, the hand waving in part 3, and you know, so on and so forth. There's all these little things that show them that it's a vision and not a dream. One thing this franchise doesn't do well is making the vision last as long as it does after the vision, like the sequence of events. It never really lines up well. The plane takes off, it's in the sky for over 2-3 minutes, and then it blows up. But then after the dream, he gets off, the plane takes off rather quickly. Usually you have to wait a while on the runway. It takes off, and it's still visible. It's not like more than a few hundred feet off the ground, and it, poof, it blows up. So it's like that did not line up at all with his vision, and it's the same thing for parts 2 through 5. It's never the same. One thing that I read that I can't confirm is that when Billy Hitchcock is looking at the plane going up, it like the reflection shows the plane going like past his face, kind of foreshadowing how he gets decapitated. One thing I thought was really cool that I never noticed on first dozen watches is in the background, in the airport, you can see on the wall a picture of a train and a picture of a bus right behind where Terry is standing. Does anyone know who the hell Clear lives with? We know her dad's dead and her mom abandoned her, but who the hell is she living with? She's 17 in high school. Who does she live with? We never see her aunt, uncle, grandma. Like, who the fuck is at home with her? No one is ever there. So that's the big mystery of this movie to me. Who the hell is taking care of her? She has to get a ride back home from the airport. You're telling me she has no loved ones at home to pick her up after that incident? The lightning that Alex sees strike the road, I like that. Kind of looks like the Grim Reaper's hand kind of pointing at him. And it just shows that death is on his street. It's watching him. And there's even that one shot right after he gets home after the plane crash. It's just an exterior outside the window looking in shot. It's almost like we're looking through the POV of death. Then we get the funeral scene, and it takes place 39 days later. So death has just been kind of snoozing for 39 days, waiting to pick them off. And I did some research on bad omens and unlucky numbers and shit like that, superstitions, and found out that in Afghanistan culture, the number 39 is a cursed number. So maybe they knew that while writing this, and that's why it's 39 days later. And if you take away the 7 survivors from the 46 total people, that's 39. And then you get Miss Luton's address is also 39. At the funeral, some random photographer just shows up and takes a picture of Alex and Clear, and then we never see that picture like in the paper later on, or one of them have it. And supposedly, like, that picture had much more meaning. That scene, that moment, had much more meaning in the alternate version of this film, with the other ending that it was supposed to have in the original script. At the very end, when Alex is dead and Claire's pregnant and having a baby, she has that picture from the funeral that we see. But now that's all gone. So now we just have this random guy at the funeral popping up and taking a picture that we never see again. Another thing that just kind of feels random is the leaf falling in front of Alex. And that moment happens again with Clear at the end of the alternate ending. So now, because they changed the ending, this moment here also just feels random and like unexplained. Like, what's so significant about this big leaf falling in front of Alex? Billy's just friggin' funny at the funeral, talking about how, my driving instructor said I was going to die at a very young age. Is he true? Is that right? And of course he does die at a very young age. And Carter says something that's just unintentionally funny. He's like, I'm never going to die. And automatically I thought of Team America. I promise I will never die. So Alex is like researching hard about airplanes and trying to figure out what caused it. He's like obsessed. And I thought it was funny that he sees a picture of Clear in the newspaper. And then it like makes him horny, I guess, because right after he sees it, he just goes for a nudie magazine and almost starts to like jerk off before an owl shows up. And if you think that owl is random, it's not. I did some research. Owls are supposedly bad luck. If an owl shows up at your house, and if it especially goes in your house, that means bad news is coming and maybe somebody is going to die. So that's why the owl showed up. Do you know anyone named Todd that spells their name T-O-D with one D? That's how you spell his name. It's not just I thought it was the newspaper that said like, USA Today, and that's why it was T-O-D of today. But no, maybe it was the name Todd in the paper that got cut out. Because when I was watching this movie with the captions on, it said, whenever Todd was speaking, it said Todd, T-O-D. So that's how he spells his name. I've never seen Todd with one D before. Another thing I've never seen before is people shaving with no shaving cream and no water on their face. Like, this guy's terrible at shaving. No wonder you're cutting yourself, buddy. He's a terrible shaver. And another thing I've never seen before is the line that you do laundry on in your bathroom above the tub. I've never seen that ever in my life. Todd's kill is probably one of the most disturbing in the franchise because it lingers. Like, this is a franchise where people's deaths are usually quick, but this one's much more slow. And I love that his eyes start to like turn red, and you can see that death is actually pulling on that thing harder. So there's some interference here. It's not like natural. After he dies, the water goes away, which I get why they did it, because they want it to look like a suicide and not an accident. If the water was there, they put two and two together. Like, oh, he slipped. But it's a bit extra supernatural, and I wish this wouldn't be here. I wish the way every kill in this franchise would be done is through happy accidents that are explainable, that don't have death, like physically moving things on its own. Like, I can accept the wind because that's actually natural. Like, there's wind. You can just have wind blow things around in these movies. I accept that. But when death is like physically moving things without wind, and he's making car doors lock, and he's making windows in part 2 shut without wind helping out, like, I don't like that stuff. I want it to be more like, for example, the weight guy in part 3. That's more believable. There's no things being moved by death. You got the vibration that loosens the what's already loose sword, cuts the wire, and allows that to happen. I want every kill to be like that, where it's more explainable, happy accidents, a domino effect, and it's not forced like everything at the end of part 2. Holy shit. I already said my piece about Clear being at Todd's place after he dies and how I don't like it, but I thought it was interesting that the FBI are already there. So they called the FBI after their son killed himself, the parents? Or how do they know? How did the FBI know so quickly that Todd was dead? Why did they show up? They think that fucking Alex went there and killed him? I do kind of think that they're quick, especially Alex, a little quick to believe that it's not over and that they're all going to die. Like, only one person at this point has died, Todd, and I get that he had that one clue, TOD, the paper, but it's like, I don't think that's enough. Like, this is before they go and see Tony Todd, his character, and Alex is already like, it's not over. Like, I think we're all gonna, die. I think one more person should have died before he got to that point. I like the body spasm jump scare because it's realistic. That actually does happen. But what's not realistic is people's eyes blinking when they're dead, like Todd's does. If you look closely, the actor is like twitching his eyes and blinks at one moment. One thing you never want to hear a mortician tell you is, "I'll see you soon." That's messed up to say. He's implying that he's going to die. "I'll see you soon on my table. I'll be here waiting with the embalming fluid. See you soon." And is he death, or is he just some morbid jokester just trying to fuck with them? But what he's saying is true, so it's not like it's a joke. There's some truth to it. And that line's kind of silly, but it makes me laugh every time. Like, you don't even want to fuck with that Mac Daddy. And because he's calling Death Mac Daddy, I guess it was okay for me to say earlier, time and time again, that Death was a male. So Death, I guess, does have a gender.
Then you can just drop fucking dead.
Then we get the whole bus scene, and this is one of the better scenes in the movie. It's fantastic. I love the conversation they're having. I find it really fascinating about, like, how do we know that something we do today is the thing that's going to cause our death, next week or maybe even 40 years from now. I thought that was pretty cool. And he sees the vision of the bus. If I was him, I would have said something to Clear, like, "Did you see that? Did you see the bus?" Like, I think he should have spoke up about that. And if I was directing this scene, I feel like they should have cut this scene down some at the end. That way the surprise is more surprising. You don't have time to think about it because they already gave you that clue about the bus. And then she's like, drop fucking dead. And there's a couple of beats there, a couple extra beats too long. Like, if I was directing this, I would have had her get hit by the bus in mid-sentence. Something I read that I did go back and watch to confirm if it was true or not is the blood on their face after she gets hit by that bus looks like numbers. On Alex's face, the blood looks like a 7 on his cheek, and there's 7 people that get off the plane, and he's the 7th one on the list to die. And on Carter's face, online it said 5, but when I watched it, it looks like there's a 4 on his cheek with the blood, and he's the 4th one to die. His girlfriend's number 2, and Val is 3, and he's number 4. So that's a weird coincidence. I doubt they did that on purpose. Then we get Miss Luton's death scene, and one thing I noticed is that the painted glass window has a knife, like a big dagger, and that's what ends up killing her at the end of her scene, which was pretty cool. I never noticed it before the last watch. And also, the mug thing, again, is that naturally happening or is that death causing that to happen? That's something that I wish could have happened in a different way where it's more explainable, like a happy accident. Like I would have had her somehow bump it into something. Like maybe she's already a little tipsy and she hits it against something. That way it's not death like forcing something to happen, because it seems like death is making that crack in the coffee mug. And I never understood why she was throwing the liquor as a kid. I'm like, what's wrong with the liquor? Like, why is she throwing it? But now I understand it's the logo. It's bringing back bad memories. And why does she have a big like horn, like some kind of rhinoceros horn that she's wrapping up? Like she's like a French teacher. Why does she have this weird shit at her house that she's packing up? But yeah, and it's so funny that she doesn't recognize or hear the water dripping everywhere, and not water, the liquor, probably I think it was vodka, like dripping, especially when she's hovering over the computer. Like you would hear every drip, drip, drip. But I guess she has the music playing, the John Denver music again, and her kill's fantastic also. Like the shard hits her, the glass hits her right in the throat, and like an idiot, she pulls it out, so now all the blood's just free to keep pouring out. And she's like slipping in her own blood. And I just love the domino effect here, the explosion knocking the knife further into her heart, and that moment when she's going for the towel and it knocks over the knife rack. That's a cool moment. Alex is a moron for grabbing the knife like he thinks he can save her at that point. Now he's putting fingerprints everywhere and his footprints in the blood. Not very smart. And Billy is just everywhere. You notice that? Like he's at the coffee place when Terry gets hit, and now he's just right here. Like weird, again, coincidences. But according to Bloodworth, in death, there are no coincidences. I forgot to talk about the FBI agents and my positives. I like that they're in this movie, and you got Daniel Roebuck from many films like River's Edge and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And I liked his improv line where he's like, don't take this the wrong way, but sometimes you give me the creeps. One thing I didn't understand was the whole let's go find Alex thing, and the way it plays out is confusing because they make it seem like she doesn't know where Alex is at, but then she does. Like instantly she finds him. She gets dropped off and she's like, he could be anywhere from here to there. And then she just walks in one direction for like 5 seconds and there he is, and she found him instantly. Like she already knew exactly where he was. And how did she know where he was? That's never explained. Again, is she clairvoyant? Is she supernaturally psychic? Like I don't understand her character. I feel like in this situation I would be like Carter's character, like fuck it, like if I'm gonna die, let's just have some fun. Kind of like the guy in part 4 who's like, if I'm dying, I'm trying, I'm gonna go get laid. And this one, Carter's just driving like a madman, and I guess because these other people in his car aren't next, death isn't letting him crash because he's just driving without his hands on the wheel, and he's like avoiding so many different car accidents. And if it was just him in the car, I bet he would have crashed a lot sooner. But yeah, so I really like this scene. He stops on the train tracks, and they get out, and he has a couple of visions of the belt breaking and there being a train. And then again, this is when death starts forcing things to happen, and I wish it was more happy accidents, something that could naturally happen. But now the way this plays out is a little forced. Like his car won't start, even though it was working perfectly well right before that. His car starts locking on its own. His seatbelt is jammed now out of the blue. Like stuff like that. So I just wish that wasn't here and that it was written more smartly. When Alex saves Carter from getting hit by that train, I wish this would have been shot and edited differently because it looks like they full on got hit. I don't understand how they survived. You see them get hit by the train. But then in the next shot, they're like 10 feet over here. Like they jumped. Bullshit. I saw them get hit. I don't understand that at all. Like, it makes you think that maybe because Alex was there and he's not meant to die, that Death basically had to use his wind power and blew them. That sounds sexual. You know what I mean. He blew them to the other side because they're clearly standing right there. He's still like halfway in the car, and then boom, impact. And now they're over here. They teleported? Did Death blow them? Like, I can't think of another. Did Death push them to the other side? It looks like it to me. Then we get Billy Hitchcock's kill, which is awesome. It used to be like my favorite growing up. I always loved decapitations, and especially when they're like half of a decapitation. It's more unique and awesome, and kind of foreshadowed a little earlier when his hat got knocked off. It's like having his head knocked off. You know, a little bit of a stretch there, but had to think of something, right? So yeah, I like that his head got chopped off, but as a kid, I thought that his head was chopped off by a chain, because they show a chain underneath the train, which I didn't know they had, but I thought the chain got loose and went around and knocked his head off, but now clearly it's a piece of Carter's car. And Carter did say a few minutes earlier that he was going to kill Billy, and in a way he did, because of his actions, because he parked his car there, and it's his car killing Billy. So Carter was right. He did kill Billy. I love that Carter pisses himself, and they almost took this out of the movie. I guess the producers didn't like it. They thought it was too goofy, but I love it. It just shows that, you know, this badass, he thinks he's so tough. He's a chicken shit. He pissed himself. So I love that they kept that in the script. One thing that doesn't work, because they changed the ending and took out the sex scene, is that after the decapitation, when Alex is like freaking out, he's talking about, you know, the design and how it skips and blah, blah, blah. Clear goes up to Alex and she calls him baby, like their boyfriend and girlfriend. In this cut of the film, we just think they're best friends, or not even like they weren't even friends before they got on that plane. And now she's calling him baby, because originally this scene was right after they had sex on the beach. So with that scene taken out and, you know, the whole pregnant thing gone now, it's weird now watching this scene and hearing her go, Alec, baby, calm down. It's like, baby, you guys are just friends. Then we get the whole sequence at the cabin, which supposedly is the cabin in Lake Placid. He like makes it death proof, like that Tarantino film. And something almost kills him, but it's revealed not much later that he's not even next. So what was up with that? Like, I don't get this whole reveal. I said it earlier, like the whole like, oh, he switched seats, so he's not even next, and the path explosion, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't, I can't make sense of it. And when I watched the commentary hoping for an explanation, guess what? They were confused. I don't remember what they said exactly, but they were like, yeah, this doesn't really work. We don't really understand it, but whatever. Like, all that's important is that he says she's next, and now the audience understands. Like, okay, she's next, whatever. Moving on. But it's still, like, when you really think about it, like, how does him switching seats, like, it doesn't make sense, whatever. But if he was not next that whole time, why is Death making this move, and then the fishing hook opens the door, knife would have hit him in the face? Like, why is he almost getting killed if he's not next? So Clear rats out Alex to the FBI. I guess she thinks he'll be safer in their custody than the death-proof cabin. And he almost dies time and time again trying to get to Clear. Death keeps, like, holding him off. And when he falls down that hill, it seems like at the bottom, he is forced, like, to stop by Death. It seemed like because he's not next, he was not allowed to impale his face with that branch. Like, if he was next, that would have went right through his face. But because he's not next, he can't die. And they really explore that more in part 2 and part 4. And I kind of don't like that. It's just goofy. It's like, really? So you're telling me that if he threw himself off a fucking skyscraper, he'd land on a bed of pillows at the bottom or some shit? It's ridiculous. I don't like that addition to, like, part 2 and 4 when they explore it more. It's just goofy and dumb. Like, if you want to kill yourself, I'm sure you can find a way to do it, even if you're not next. So, but yeah, in this scene, it's kind of an example of that we get more later on. that they cannot die if they're not next. So then we get to the scene where he saves Clear, and in the alternate version, the original version, he died, and like really died. If you watch the alternate version, like you see his face like melted off, like he's electrocuted and on fire. He's dead. But now he lives, and I guess they just dropped the whole investigation. Like it just goes 6 months later, and we're like led to believe he got let off the hook. They were after him. Luton died, and now Hitchcock, and it's like they're gonna have questions. So how did he and they found his fingerprints, his footprints at Miss Luton's house. So it's like he would have been arrested. So I guess not. I like that they had the guy singing John Denver's Rocky Mountain High in French. And in case you were wondering, yes, they are of legal age to drink. They're 18, and you only have to be 18 in France. It's not like in the States. I thought it was pretty cool how they tied the 180 flight to the sign at the end, how it says like micro 81 or something, and backwards it looks like 180. And I thought it was kind of a dumb question when Carter's like, well, who's next? Well, it's like 50-50 chance it's you. Shouldn't you be looking around now, and shouldn't you know that it's you? You just had a conversation not more than 2 minutes ago about who was next. You were like, until something happens to you, I'm the safest fucker in the world, and now you saved him. You should know it's you that's next. But I get why they did it, so that, you know, right after he says it, you get to see the sign coming right behind him and smack him. And so, also, when you watch that stunt, it looks painful. When he tackles, when Alex gets tackled by Kerr Smith's character, Carter, he hits his head really hard on the ground. It looked fucking painful. So there you have it. That is the end of my long Final Destination discussion. And I can definitely guarantee probably that the rest of this franchise will be lengthy reviews as well, because I love this franchise and I want to talk about everything and point everything out that I like. And all the clues and everything, all the foreshadowing, because it's fun. So, and yeah, anything that I pointed out that you didn't notice? Anybody learn anything? Let me know. And what is your favorite kill? What's your favorite scene? Do you like this the most in the franchise? Let me know all your thoughts, Final Destination related, in the comments below. And as always, if you like what you've seen here, you can hit this like button and become a subscriber today just by clicking on my cartoon face in about 5 seconds. And remember, it's all an opinion. You don't need to get butthurt about it.